Everyone says the current Prime Minister is a man of grace and brilliance, the dream lover of countless noble ladies in the capital, yet I can't avoid him fast enough. After living in his residence for 3 years, do you think I don't know what he's really like, in public? He puts on the appearance of a dignified gentleman. Behind others, he's just a cunning wolf with a big tail. Since Ajao has quite a few complaints about me. Why did you kiss me back then? Ji Hung cornered me against the wall. The corners of his mouth lifted in a half-smile. Whenever he brings this up, I wish I could just disappear into a crack in the ground. You know very well, I was drunk back then. It was just an accident. I don't care. Ji Hung trapped me in his arms, speaking with a serious tone. Since you've taken my innocence, you must take full responsibility for me. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful stories every day. Now, the story begins. My name is Song Jiao, and I am the daughter of General Wei Yuan. My parents had me late in life and spoiled me, making me willful, mischievous, and utterly lawless. At home, my parents doted on me. Outside, my friends had my back. Life was carefree and unrestrained. I had thought I could spend my life like this, chasing chickens and teasing dogs, until this year, when I came of age, I met Ji Hung, a man who struck fear into my heart. That year, my parents were ordered to guard the northern frontier. Planning to stay there for 3 years, they left me alone in the capital, and worried that I couldn't take care of myself, they arranged for me to stay at Ji Hung's residence. Hung, from now on, we'll have to trouble you to take good care of Xiao Jiao, my father said, patting Ji Hung on the shoulder. Ji Hung looked at me and nodded slightly. He was dressed in a brocade robe, white as snow, spotless, like an immortal descending to the mortal world. At that time, I was young and ignorant, knowing little about Ji Hung, only remembering that I often heard this name from my father's mouth. When he was young, he learned martial arts under my father's tutelage. He was exceptionally talented and became my father's proud disciple. Now, he has risen to the position of the current Prime Minister. According to my parents, Ji Hung is a steady and thoughtful person. They felt very reassured to place me under his care. On the day my parents left the capital, Ji Hung took me directly to his residence. Back then, I naively followed him without a second thought. I hadn't realized that from this day on, my carefree days were gone for good. Ever since I moved into the Ji residence, I couldn't figure out why this man, who was only 6 years older than me, lived a life more old-fashioned and rigid than my own father. Ji Hung's daily routine was so regimented it left me astounded. He always rose at the 3rd watch and slept at the 9th. Never staying up late or sleeping in for even a moment. Daily life is also quite dull. Aside from handling official duties, it's just practicing swordsmanship and calligraphy. No wonder my father said he's steady. That's not just ordinary steadiness. He's as steady as an old dog. That's why I've always called him Old Ji. To be honest, my initial impression of him was quite positive. Aside from his old-fashioned and rigid demeanor, that was until this guy started trying to control me. The night is deep. Return to your room and rest. Ji Hung, dressed in white inner robes, stood coldly at the entrance of the Ji residence, blocking my way. It was already midnight, the deepest hour of the night. He had already gone to bed long ago. But somehow someone had tipped him off about my plan to sneak out for a drink. That guy immediately jumped out of bed and rushed to the main gate of the Ji residence to stop me, so frantic that he didn't even have time to put on his outer robe. I deliberately waited until he was asleep before leaving. How did I still get caught? Who was it? Who snitched on me? I gritted my teeth and looked around, my eyes sweeping over the crowd, finally settling on the butler who was pretending to look up at the moon. I hadn't even spoken. Yet the butler nervously defended himself. I didn't snitch. It wasn't me. Ha, stuttering like that says it all. It was you. Ji Hung stood expressionlessly in front of me, his tone calm but firm. Go rest. Song Jiao, I still wanted to argue. Oh, old Ji, you just don't get the lifestyle of young people who goes to bed this early. Do you think the whole world is just like you? Ji Hung looked at me coldly, unmoved. I got a bit anxious and blurted out, besides, I already promised Chi Ning I'd go out for drinks. I regretted saying that as soon as the words left my mouth, because I knew that mentioning Chi Ning would only make him angry. Sure enough, Ji Hung raised an eyebrow and said, him again. You're not allowed to go. He pointed at the door lock and signaled the butler with his eyes. The butler immediately understood and quickly locked the door. Alas, Chi Ning and I are close friends. Since our families have been friends for generations, we grew up playing together in the streets and have a deep bond. But in Ji Yu-hung's eyes, Chi Ning and I are just two idle loafers. He sneered at Chi Ning and me for spending all our time together, indulging in cockfighting and dog racing. Ji Yu-hung turned around and gave me a forced smile, saying, "If you really can't sleep, go over the lessons I taught you today a few more times. I'll quiz you tomorrow morning, and if you can't answer, you'll have to copy them 10 times as punishment. You rascal, back when my father asked you to tutor me, it wasn't so you could use it to threaten me. Of course I can sleep, of course I can sleep." I scrambled back to my room in a flurry. If you had said that earlier, I would have been able to sleep just fine. Inside the room, I lay on the bed and sighed. Since when did Ji Yu-hung start keeping such a close watch on me? It seems like it was after that time I got drunk and slept for a full day and night after that. He became much stricter and started strictly forbidding me from going out to drink at night. I remember that day was Chi Ning's birthday, and he held a grand banquet at the Drunken Immortal Pavilion, as Chi Ning's best friend. I naturally went to attend the feast. While eating and drinking, I started a drinking contest with Chi Ning, betting that whoever got drunk first would be a dog. Then I got drunk. He had been drinking until the dead of night and still hadn't returned to the GU residence. In his drunken haze, the door of the private room was suddenly kicked open. The next second, he heard Ji Yu-hung's voice. "Had enough to drink, Song Jiao." The tone was cold, the anger unmistakable. Ji Yu-hung stood tall and graceful in a white robe, his peach blossom eyes filled with anger. I was startled and stammered, "Hey, old Ji Yu, what brings you here?" Ji Yu-hung glanced at the empty wine jars on the table, stepped right past Chi Ning who was sitting beside me, and walked toward me as if no one else was there. A cold aura drew closer, and before I could react, I was swept up into a horizontal carry. Looking up, I saw Ji Yu-hung's sharply defined jawline, his eyes surging with anger. "Do you know how late it is? Why aren't you home yet?" I wasn't sure if it was my imagination, but in front of Chi Ning, Ji Yu-hung seemed to deliberately emphasize the words "home yet." Those who know would say I'm just staying at the GU residence. But those who don't might think I've married into the GU family and become one of them. By the time Ji Yu-hung brought me back to the mansion, I was already drunk and completely disoriented. In my dazed state, I thought I saw my giant teddy bear wiping my face. I have a white giant teddy bear, as tall as a person, named Marshmallow, which was given to me by Ji Yu-hung. When I first moved into the GU residence, I wasn't used to it and had trouble sleeping due to the unfamiliar bed, often staying awake all night. After Ji Yu-hung found out, he bought a giant teddy bear and placed it by my bedside to keep me company as I fell asleep. Now I actually see Cotton Candy holding a warm towel, wiping my face and hands. "Cotton Candy, you've become a spirit," I said, looking at him with drunken, blurry eyes. The person across from me froze at my words, looked at me as if I were a fool, and sneered, "You're so drunk you're hallucinating." He tucked me in and was about to leave, but I pulled him onto the bed. "Where are you going, Marshmallow? Come sleep with me." He struggled on the bed. "I already told you, I'm not." Drunk as I was as strong as an ox, holding him tightly. Then I paused for a moment, my tone slightly disgusted. "Marshmallow, how did you get so firm? You're all hard." "Well, it's just not as comfortable to hold as before." What happened next was probably that he wanted to run away, but I wouldn't let him. After tossing and turning for half the night, he finally fell asleep peacefully. When I woke up, the sun was already high in the sky. The bedside was empty. As soon as I got out of bed, I saw Ji Yu-hung sitting on the chair. "Old Ji Yu, good morning, it's getting late." His eyes were dark and bruised, his hair disheveled, and a strange flush tinged both his cheeks. The white robe, which usually looked neat and spotless, was now crumpled. Who knows who had been rumpling it? I approached him with a puzzled look. "How did you end up like this? Did you get into a fight with someone?" Ji Yu-hung sprang to his feet, staring at me in disbelief. "You don't remember?" His words left me completely baffled. What should I remember? I drank too much last night and was completely out of it. I only remember him bringing me back last night, but I can't recall what happened after that. How could you not remember?" Ji Yu-hung looked very wronged, but he stammered and couldn't explain himself clearly. just tightly clutching the hem of his clothes like a wronged little wife. His behavior left me utterly perplexed. What's wrong with me anyway? I sat on the edge of the bed with my legs crossed, looking at him with a puzzled expression. Ji Hung seemed very dissatisfied with my reaction, fidgeting awkwardly for a long time before finally blurting out, "Go copy the book, copy it 100 times. What, 100 times? Are you crazy? I just had a little drink outside. Is it necessary to punish me with such torture?" Ji Hung only replied with a sarcastic mph, then turned and left without looking back, as if he had suffered a great injustice. What the heck? You're punishing me by making me copy books, and now you're acting all aggrieved. After that day, I noticed Ji Hung had changed. He went from being an old stick in the mud to a strange old stick in the mud. He still taught me my lessons as rigidly as before, only now, he would often blush while teaching, and his ears would turn alarmingly warm. I asked him what was wrong, but he wouldn't say. It's really unusual, too unusual. Considering Ji Hung's recent unusual behavior, I decided to avoid provoking him, to avoid upsetting him and having him abuse his power to make me copy books as punishment. Then he noticed that I didn't seem to enjoy opposing him as much anymore, and his mood improved greatly. Sometimes he would even hum a tune unconsciously, as if he had resolved a major problem. However, his joy didn't last long before another trouble came his way. A horseback riding competition made Ji Hung the dream lover of all the young ladies in the capital. Matchmakers swarmed to his door in countless numbers. No matter how many Ji Hung turned away, more would come, and the threshold of the Ji family home was nearly worn out. He was quite troubled by this. A while ago, to celebrate the emperor's birthday, the palace held a horse riding competition. The emperor, having heard of Ji Hung's exceptional equestrian skills, specifically requested his participation. Although Ji Hung disliked showing off, he could not openly defy the emperor's wishes and thus agreed. Unexpectedly, after just one lap on horseback, he won the hearts of all the noble ladies of the capital who were present. Ji Hung had always kept a low profile, focusing solely on court affairs and rarely appearing at banquets. So most noble ladies in the capital had only heard his name but never actually seen him. They had assumed the current chief minister would be an elderly traditionalist in his 70s, but to their surprise, he turned out to be an exceptionally handsome young man, and one who was both scholarly and skilled in martial arts. Thus, Ji Hung instantly rose to the top of the list of the most desirable bachelors for young women in the capital. A more reserved woman would send a matchmaker to propose marriage on her behalf. Some bolder ones would directly visit in splendid attire, bringing gifts to express their admiration. Among these visitors was an old acquaintance of mine, Han Chua. "Young lady, please return. My master is not at the residence at the moment." The steward's voice came from outside the door. I followed the sound with my gaze. Through the half-open door, I saw the butler standing before a woman in white. Her figure slender, her sleeves fluttering gently. Even without seeing her face, one could tell she was an elegant beauty. I wondered which noble family's beautiful daughter had come to deliver gifts this time. Ji Hung was actually in the residence. It's not that the butler deliberately lied. It was simply a matter of necessity. During this period, there were too many people coming to propose marriage and bring gifts, and Ji Hung was overwhelmed by the disturbance, helpless. He instructed the butler to falsely claim that he was not at home, avoiding meeting them in hopes of finding some peace and quiet. Upon hearing the butler's words, the woman in white paused, seemingly disappointed, but showed no intention of leaving. She still intended to wait. "Ah," I sighed, "another love-struck, devoted, innocent young girl. I just don't understand. What's so great about Ji Hung that makes you all so unwaveringly loyal?" Yes, he is indeed handsome, indeed holds a high position and wields great power, indeed talented in both literary and martial arts, but these are just surface appearances. Don't judge a book by its cover. Once you get to know him better, you'll realize he's just a stubborn and boring old fuddy-duddy, and he loves to boss people around. He even enjoys making people copy books as punishment. What are you standing there for? I've been waiting for you for a long time. A cold voice suddenly sounded from behind, startling me. Ji Hung walked out of the study, holding a book in his hand, and slowly approached me. He had just been tutoring me in the study, and I was so overwhelmed that I excused myself to use the restroom to get some fresh air. I was about to reply to him, But before I could get the words out, a commotion erupted outside the door. The woman in white, perhaps hearing Ji Yu-hung's voice, broke free from the butler's restraint and rushed in from outside. She walked gracefully up to Ji Yu-hung, lowered her head and eyes, and said softly, "Lord Ji Yu." Ji Yu-hung glanced at her, his expression unreadable. I stood aside, quietly watching the drama unfold. She continued, "I am Chu Hannah, and I have long admired you, sir." Chu Hannah, such a familiar name. I carefully observed the woman before me. This person has an exquisite face and a charming figure, dressed in a pure white dress with a few white lotus flowers delicately embroidered on the hem. Oh, isn't she that white lotus? Speaking of which, she should be an old acquaintance of mine. We used to fight a lot when we were kids. The reason for the fight, initially, was because of Chi Ning. Don't be fooled by Chi Ning's tall and sturdy build now. As a child, he was quite thin and weak, with a gentle nature, so he was often bullied by other kids. The one who loved to bully Chi Ning the most was Chu Hannah. Of course, she considered herself delicate and fragile, so she naturally wouldn't do it herself. She preferred to form cliques and direct other kids to do the dirty work. So I always remember when we were kids, Chi Ning would run to me crying, telling me that someone had snatched his sugar painting away, or that someone had crushed his rattle drum. Every time, I would help him get back at them. Listen up, Chi Ning is my buddy. If anyone dares to bully him, I won't hold back. I'd grab those little troublemakers by their pigtails and shout loudly. Chi Ning would stand to the side, blinking his sparkling eyes at me, raising his little hands and clapping as hard as he could. At that time, I felt like I was the chivalrous heroine written in the scripts. It was from this moment that Chu Hannah and I officially became enemies. She couldn't stand me meddling in others' business, nor my boyish way of doing things, calling me a willful and unruly tigress. I couldn't stand her pretentious fragility and her deeply scheming nature. Calling her an affected and hypocritical white lotus. We never got along, until later when her father was assigned to a post in Liangzhu and she left the capital with him. Only then did my life return to peace. I never expected to run into her here now. When did she return to the capital, Lord Ji Yu? Why aren't you saying anything? Chu Hannah was staring intently at Ji Yu-hung, not yet noticing me standing to the side. She gently tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, looking utterly pitiable and delicate. Why have you come here? Ji Yu-hung's tone was as cold as his expression. Perhaps no man had ever spoken to her with such indifference before. She paused for a moment, then quickly put on a smile again. I came here to say that I admire you. I don't like you. Please leave. Ji Yu-hung replied swiftly and smoothly, as he had spoken these words countless times over the past few days. After saying that, he turned to leave, then glanced back at me, signaling for me to follow. Chu Hannah, following Ji Yu-hung's gaze, finally noticed me, who had been watching the drama for a long time. She looked shocked and said sharply, aren't you the old moth?" Before the word tiger could come out, she glanced at Ji Yu-hung, abruptly stopped herself, and switched back to her previous soft and charming tone. "Song Jiao, long time no see. What are you doing here?" "Well, actually, I don't really feel like talking to her." Ji Yu-hung noticed the displeasure in my eyes and asked softly, "Do you know her?" I nodded. "Dislike her?" I nodded again. "See the guest out." He immediately signaled to the butler. Then, Chu Hannah was dragged out right before my eyes. "And if you trespass on private property again, I will report you to the authorities." Ji Yu-hung glanced at Chu Hannah, adding coldly, "In the study." I sat next to Ji Yu-hung. He practiced calligraphy on the black wooden desk, his brush moving like a dragon and snake. Fully absorbed, I read at the pink desk, one eye on guard, the other on watch, drowsy and half asleep. Just as I was about to fall asleep, Ji Yu-hung suddenly tapped my forehead with his pen. "Pay attention." I jolted awake, and the first thing that met my eyes was Ji Yu-hung's face, so close it was almost touching mine. Why was he leaning in so close? The early winter morning light streamed through the wooden window, scattering over Ji Yu-hung and casting a warm golden glow around him, softening his usually cool and distant features with a touch of warmth. Having lived in his mansion for 3 years, this was the first time I truly looked at him carefully. I couldn't help but swallow hard. He was somewhat good-looking, with a face like that. No wonder those young ladies were so infatuated with him. It's just a pity that, although he has a face that could enchant the world, He possesses a heart as cold and detached as a monk's. All those girls, except for Chu Hannah, were so innocent and sincere in their affections that even I was starting to feel moved. He didn't fancy a single one of them. Old GU. I looked at him, a bit nosy. Do you have someone you like? He paused his writing, a bit awkwardly saying, why ask that all of a sudden? Just asking casually. I flipped a page of the book nonchalantly. If you don't want to answer, forget it. The person beside me was quiet for a while. Just as I thought he wouldn't answer the question, he suddenly spoke. Yes, he said yes, I just asked casually. Never expected this old-fashioned guy actually has someone he likes. My gossip radar is buzzing. Who is it? Who is it? I snapped the book shut, ready to enjoy the drama. Ji Hung's face flushed instantly, and he pursed his lips, looking at me as if he wanted to say something but hesitated. Old-fashioned, too embarrassed to say it. Since you won't tell me, I'll just guess myself. Ji Hung's life is very routine. Basically following a 2.1-line pattern, he goes out to work during the day, dealing mostly with men in the court. At night, when he returns to the GU residence, from the gatekeepers to the stewards, it's all men again. All these years, aside from me, no other woman has ever appeared by GU Hung's side. So, there's only one truth. You like men, huh? I looked at GU Hung as if I had discovered some secret. He stood there, flustered. How did you come to that conclusion? Genius. I didn't answer his question and continued asking, who is the person you like? After a moment of thought, I made a bold guess. Is it the butler? He couldn't help but roar. It's a woman. And she's an idiot. A woman. Unable to contain my burning curiosity, I stepped forward and asked, who is it? But I accidentally tripped over a table leg, lost my balance, and fell toward GU Hung in front of me. He reacted quickly, gripping my shoulders firmly to steady me. At this moment, the two of them were so close that I could almost see his Adam's apple bob. GU Hung looked at me, as if mustering great courage, and spoke earnestly. The person I like is, report. A sudden announcement from outside the study interrupted his unfinished words. The visitor was the butler. Sir, Miss Song. The butler bowed to us. GU Hung glanced at the butler and said impatiently, what is it? We've just received word that General Wei Wan and his wife will return triumphantly to the capital tomorrow. My parents are coming back. What wonderful news. I jumped up in excitement. I left GU Hung behind and dashed out of the study. I'm going to pack my things. I can move back home tomorrow. Finally, I can leave the GU residence and escape the clutches of that old stick in the mud. GU Hang, HMPH. Let's see how you'll manage to control me from now on. Overnight, the atmosphere in the GU residence became quite delicate. I, on the other hand, was immersed in the joy of returning home, busily packing my luggage with great enthusiasm. On GU Hung's side, for some reason, the atmosphere felt inexplicably heavy. In the evening, GU Hung knocked on my door, dressed in white. He carried 6 jars of peach blossom wine. I'd like to invite you for a drink. Hearing his words, I froze on the spot. Isn't he the one who hates it the most when I drink? And now he's actually inviting me for a drink. I reached out to feel his forehead in confusion. Do you have a fever? After finding his temperature normal, I was even more puzzled. You're not sick. Then why are you talking nonsense? GU Hung stood outside the door holding the alcohol, having his forehead felt for a long time, and said helplessly, are you drinking or not? If not, I'm leaving. He turned around as if to walk away. Drink. 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 I hastily took the wine. Although GU Hung's behavior was unusual, this is peach blossom wine. Normally, I'd have to wait in line to buy this wine, but now that it's delivered right to my door, of course I can't let it slip away. After a few cups, I let out a tipsy burp and started feeling dizzy. Good wine, good wine. Everything before my eyes seemed to blur into a hazy dream. GU Hung, sitting beside me, curled the corners of his lips into a faint smile. He leaned closer to me, wearing a serious expression. Do I look like cotton candy to you now? His words made me laugh. No, you don't. I'm drunk, not stupid. I can still tell the difference between a person and a doll. GU Hung looked a bit disappointed, lowered his head, and muttered, why did I mistake it last time? But not this time. I couldn't make out what he was saying, only feeling extremely sleepy. I tilted my head and fell asleep on the table. When I came to, I found myself already lying in bed, covered with a blanket, feeling very warm. because I was too sleepy, I didn't open my eyes. Suddenly, a hurried breath drew near. The next second, my lips were met with a warm touch. A long time later, he reluctantly got up, ready to leave. Just then, I opened my eyes. In my daze, he seemed like my big teddy bear, so I grabbed his white robe and mumbled drowsily, "Stay, and sleep with me." The man paused for a moment, with a half-smile and a tone that seemed sly and triumphant. "You said it yourself." As the sky began to lighten, I woke up. The drunkenness from last night had faded, and my mind was now clear. Today is the day my parents return home, and I must go back to the general's mansion. But as soon as I stood up, I felt my limbs go weak. Taking a glance beside me, I gasped sharply, "Why is Ji Hung here? And why is he so disheveled?" Gradually recalling last night's events, my mind is racing wildly. The glaring red mark on his neck bears witness to the sin I committed last night. How could I have taken advantage of him while drunk, provoking him? I've really kicked a steel plate this time. Who knows what kind of madness this old stick in the mud will unleash once he wakes up? Is he going to make me copy books again as punishment? While he's still asleep, I decided to make a run for it. Time to slip away. I tiptoed out of bed and then slipped back to the general's mansion as if my feet were greased. As soon as I entered the door, my parents rushed up and hugged me. My mother held my hand, her eyes reddening. "It's been 3 years since I last saw you. My Jayor has grown into a young lady. Have you been well at the GU residence?" Before I could speak, my father cut in. "Of course she's been well. Ji Hung is my prize student, steady and thoughtful. Jayor is naturally well taken care of at the GU residence." My father stroked his beard, brimming with confidence. "Isn't that right, Jayor? Like hell it is." I suspect that my father might have been too strict when teaching Ji Hung, making him hold a grudge, so when it was Ji Hung's turn to teach me, he found every excuse to torment me, constantly punishing me by making me copy books. Suddenly, the sound of horse hooves came from outside the door. I had a bad feeling about this. Sure enough, after a short while, a familiar voice sounded outside the door. "Master, Mistress, Ahung has come to see you." The gate was wide open, and at a glance, I saw Ji Hung sitting upright on horseback. He wore a fitted brocade robe, draped with a snow-white cloak that fluttered in the wind. A faint smile curled at the corner of his lips, radiating a striking, heroic aura. In one swift motion, he leaped down from the horse and strode directly toward me. Is this old stickler here to get back at me? My palms were sweating with nervousness. He looked at me, his tone unusually gentle, even a bit intimate. "Why did you leave in such a hurry this morning without even saying goodbye?" "Bro, in that situation, how could I have dared to say goodbye to you?" "Wait, something's off. Why does he seem so gentle?" I stared at Ji Hung in shock, suspecting that he had been possessed. Not to mention that he's usually as cold as an iceberg and would never speak so gently, let alone the fact that what happened last night should have driven this old-fashioned man into a frenzy by now. Yet, I could actually detect a hint of joy in his eyes. And, why did he go out without covering the marks on his neck? Doesn't he know how obvious it looks? Sure enough, my father asked, "Aheng, what happened to your neck?" He lied without batting an eye. "Got bitten by a mosquito." My father actually bought his nonsense. That mosquito must be pretty vicious. "It bit you so red." Ji Hung glanced at me, the corner of his mouth twitching as if holding back a smile. "Well, that's quite harsh." I stood aside, so embarrassed I wished I could find a crack in the ground to crawl into. To prevent Ji Hung from saying something he shouldn't, I dragged him into my room while my parents weren't paying attention. "What are you doing here?" I demanded. He poured himself a cup of tea with ease. "I said it already. I came to visit Master and Madam, and also, to see you." "See me?" "Yes, I wanted to see if this woman's heart is harder than stone," Ji Hung said as he stepped closer to me. "You took my innocence and then slipped away without a word." I rubbed my head, feeling deeply regretful. "Sorry, old Ji. It's all my fault for drinking too much last night. Look here, and here all these are from you biting me." He pointed at the red marks on his neck. "What good is just saying sorry?" He kept chattering non-stop. "Even though I'm 6 years older than you, I'm still an untouched, pure man. I don't care. You have to take responsibility for me." He backed me step by step into the corner until I had nowhere left to retreat. "Then how am I supposed to take responsibility?" Ji Hung looked at me and spoke the words he had long planned. Marry me, be my wife. I did not give Ji Hung an answer right away. Because I wanted to give myself more time to see clearly into my own heart. Ji Hung also said he was willing to wait until I willingly marry him. On the 10th day of the 3rd lunar month, during the spring equinox, spring was in full bloom with lush grass and singing orioles. A spring outing banquet was held by the river in the outskirts of the capital, inviting young men and women to enjoy the scenery and festivities. Thinking I was bored lately, I decided to go. But I regretted it as soon as I arrived, because this banquet, called the Spring Outing Banquet, was actually a matchmaking event in disguise. The purpose of the banquet was to use the excuse of enjoying the spring scenery to allow unmarried young men and women to meet and get to know each other. No wonder the young ladies and gentlemen from these noble families are all dressed so splendidly and are exceptionally flamboyant, to attract the favor of the opposite sex. Everyone began to showcase their talents, some recited poetry, some danced gracefully, and others performed swordplay. It was quite lively, and I, away from the crowd, was picking loquats. I'm not interested in their talents, nor am I interested in blind dates. I'm still more interested in food. I stood under the tree, looking up at the golden fruits covering its branches. Each loquat was big and round, with a fragrant aroma that made my mouth water. I stretched out my hand, jumping up and down desperately, trying to pick the fruits from the tree, but I just couldn't reach them. Miss, may I invite you to join me for a boat ride on the lake? An unfamiliar voice called out. Turning around, I saw a young man in his early 20s looking at me with eager eyes. Clearly, he had come to see me with the intention of matchmaking. No, I waved my hand in refusal. I'm busy picking loquats. After a while, Miss, may I invite you to enjoy the flowers together? Another unfamiliar man coming to see me for a matchmaking meeting. No, I kept my eyes fixed, focusing on picking the loquats. After hearing my reply, that person turned and walked away, continuing to invite the next girl. I jumped for a long time but still couldn't reach the loquat. So I rolled up my sleeves and decided to climb the tree, holding onto the tree trunk. I had just climbed a few steps when I heard a man's voice beside me again. Miss, may I? No. I couldn't stand the disturbance and cut the person off directly, my tone unfriendly. Can't you see I'm busy right now? But I regretted it as soon as I said it, because when I turned around, I realized that the person speaking to me was none other than Chi Ning. Chi Ning, I shouted excitedly from the tree, you're here too. What a coincidence. Chi Ning looked at me with a smile, his eyes as bright as the morning sun. Miss, may I help you pick the loquats? I chuckled and pointed at a large, round loquat. I want that one. Chi Ning was much taller than me. Following the direction of my finger, he reached out and easily plucked that loquat. He handed it to me with a smile. Catch, I had just reached out to take it when an uninvited guest suddenly appeared. Chu Hannah very deliberately knocked the loquat to the ground and, quite conveniently, stepped on it. Are you insane? Chi Ning glared at her and shouted angrily. Chu Hannah kicked away the loquat she had crushed, swirled the wine cup in her hand, and casually apologized. Oops, I didn't mean to. You're not going to get mad, are you? I chuckled lightly and slapped the wine glass out of her hand with a single palm. The wine splashed everywhere, leaving a glaring stain on her pink skirt. You, Chu Hannah glared at me fiercely, her eyes nearly popping out of her head. I mimicked her tone, repaying her in kind. Oops, I didn't mean it either. You're not going to get mad, are you? Furious and overwhelmed with rage, she raised her hand to strike me. You wretch. Chi Ning instinctively shielded me behind him. For a long moment, her hand remained suspended in midair, unable to move, because someone had tightly clamped down on her wrist. It was Ji Hung. His gaze was cold and sharp, like a 1,000-year-old ice that would never melt. Lord Ji. Chu Hannah stared at Ji Hung in shock, never expecting him to appear here. Ji Hung carelessly tightened his grip, and Chu Hannah's wrist began to turn red. Ouch, ouch. Chu Hannah begged for mercy. Hurting is right. Ji Hung sneered, squeezing even harder, as if there was a sound of bones cracking. Bullying Song Jiao is the same as bullying me. Got it? Chu Hannah glanced at me, his expression twisted. Got it? Ji Hung suddenly let go. Get lost. She slumped directly onto the grass, then immediately got up and walked away awkwardly. As she walked, she rubbed her purplish-red wrist, glancing at me stealthily out of the corner of her eye with a look of intense malice. I sighed, because I knew, given her temperament, she would never let it go. She would find a way to get her revenge. This dispute has captured the attention of many. No one expected that the current chief minister would appear at the banquet, and it was a matchmaking banquet at that. The noble ladies in the crowd gazed eagerly at Ji Yu-hung. Some bold girls stepped forward, trying to strike up a conversation with Ji Yu-hung, but upon meeting his icy gaze, they wisely retreated. After the crowd dispersed, Ji Yu-hung pulled me onto a small boat that could only seat 2 people, deliberately leaving Qi Ning behind. As soon as we boarded the boat, Ji Yu-hung abruptly asked, "What are you doing here?" Meeting with Qi Ning, his face was dark, and his jealousy was obvious. "I'm speechless. What are you thinking? I came here for a spring outing and happened to run into Qi Ning." Hearing this, his expression softened a bit. "And you, what are you doing here?" I asked him in return. "I remember you don't like attending these kinds of banquets." He looked at me. "I heard from Master that you were here, so I came." As he spoke, he took out a white brocade pouch and poured out a few golden loquats from it, handing them to me one by one. I was instantly overjoyed and eagerly took them. "When did you pick these?" "Just now." So sweet." I peeled a large loquat and popped it into my mouth. "Old Gu, you know, I've loved loquats since I was a child." "I know," he said softly. "How could you know?" I stuffed another loquat into my mouth. "We didn't know each other as kids." He smiled without saying a word. After a while, as if remembering something, he asked me sheepishly, "How have you been thinking about what I asked you last time?" My movement of eating the loquat suddenly stopped. I looked up and happened to meet his deep gaze. "Last time, Ji Yu-hung asked me whether I really liked him and when I would take responsibility for him. At that time, I couldn't answer. I thought about it for a long time afterward, and I realized that I actually like him. As for when this fondness began, I can't really say for sure. Maybe it was when he took care of me so carefully and patiently while I was drunk. Maybe it was when he stood up without hesitation to defend me against malice. Perhaps, even earlier." Seeing my delayed response, Ji Yu-hung grew nervous, his fingers unconsciously tightening